Welcome to yet another episode, Pound for Pound Boxer Report. After taking last week off, we are back. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, usual cast of characters, Gail from nyfights.com, Communities Digital News, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey, it is the dog days of boxing.
Right,
With
absolutely,
with with
absolutely.
apologies to all dogs present.
Including Gales, who you will for sure hear in the background throughout the live recording. Hearing them right now, as a matter of fact, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, they say
Daniel
what?
from
What the hell, dogs? What's wrong with that?
Da- Daniel from the Inscriber and for Boxing News. He'll join us shortly. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, site, as well as site/blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it pertains to the sweet science, it will get discussed. You want to find out all information about Pound for Pound Boxing Report. The site is the best place to go to right now, p4pboxingreport.com. If you want to email us questions, uh, suggestions, thoughts, etc., you can do so, p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you will see links where to check us out, all over social media, the link to the YouTube channel, the link to the Facebook page, link to the Twitter page, IG and Tumblr page, as well as links to where to find us all over uh, where podcasts are available, be it Apple Podcasts, be it Google Podcasts, be it Anchor, be it Spotify. Um, Also on the site, you'll see links to where you can donate. That donation be the best nation. Doesn't matter if it's $1, $2, $5, whatever spare change you have and want to contribute. It will help the overall production behind the scenes. Lastly, link to my Beachbody on Demand page. Please check out Beachbody on Demand if you want to get your body right. The summer programs for all fitness goals and interests. Um, be it lift more. The debut workout dropped last week during our week off. If you want to get your stuff done in the morning, be it morning meltdown, be it Pio, be it bar blend, be it 645, 6 weeks of the work, the old school P90X 1, 2, 3 series, which are all three of them are still very good, as well as the Insanity Asylum series. Uh, and last but not least, if you're looking for a boxing specific program, I suggest you check out 10 rounds, 6 week program, 3 days a week. You do boxing based cardio. 2 days a week, you do strength training in the form of weightlifting and band work. I've gone through it a couple of times. I really think you would like it. So please check out Beachbody on Demand. At the very least, check out the 14-day trial, in which for 2 weeks you get free access to any and all programs on Beachbody on Demand. Let's keep things going. Recapping fights that took place this past weekend, as well as fights that took place during our week off. Let's start with this most recent weekend uh, card that took place in San Antonio live on Showtime. The headliner for that was Mark Magsayo versus Ray Vargas. Magsayo, for those who do not remember, he's the guy who defeated Gary Russell. Surprising win to capture the WBC featherweight title. Russell has held on to that belt for a long, long while. Missed the one time a year. Finally got caught up, if you will, losing the bout to Magsayo. He was injured entering that bout when Magsayo made his first defense against former 122-pound champion Vargas, who moved up in weight from 22 to 26. I go to you, Gail. I want your comments on this one too, Jacob. Um, Vargas has had a reputation of being, let's not miss words, a boring fighter, right? Tall, angular, likes to move, likes to use his length. But in this fight, in kind of a bit of a welcome surprise, he stood in the center ring more, Gail, willing to uh, re- throw and receive without moving as much. And it made for a pretty decent scrap. He went down in round 9, but for the most part, he used his jab to control distance. He did a very good job of fighting mid-range instead of always being outside and moving around so much. And it worked to his benefit despite getting caught with that one right hand that put him down in the night. Uh, Magsayo, to me, there were opportunities where if he would have just, excuse me, lack of better term here, my apologies, given our political climate, pulled the trigger, he could have got off with more punches because Vargas was there to be hit, right? But I just felt like he didn't do enough. And I suspect that his corner, that his team afterwards are really kicking themselves because there were so many chances for him to land with punches. He just wouldn't let the shots go. Vargas ended up winning by, I believe, by split decision. Correct me if I'm wrong. 15-12 on two scorecards, 14-13 for Magsayo on the third. And yeah, Vargas is now a two-division champ. Your thoughts on not only the fight itself, but how Vargas kind of changed his tactics, if you will.
Well, both Jacob and I have been ringside for several Vargas fights. And Jacob, I think we could hear each other snoring, a few sections apart. Ray Vargas has always been a very tactically strong fighter, but it wasn't winning him a lot of admirers. Now he's suffered a broken leg. He's had a lot of time off. And I think he's had a lot of time off to think about where do I want to take my career? Yeah, he can motor along in low gear, winning fights, staying undefeated, playing all the Southern California venues. But props to him because he obviously has bigger ambitions and decided to retool things a little bit. Good for him. He's with the right trainer to do it. He's with the veteran Nacho Beristain. And for God's sakes, Nacho trained Juan Manuel Marquez. Give Ray a little bit of that fire, and you've got something way more appealing. And thank goodness that's what we saw. Now, he didn't exactly steamroll over Magsayo at all. I'll give him a little bit of leeway for being rusty, testing the injury, right, after coming back. And he got knocked down in the midst of this fight. And, I'm not mad at that because what it proved to him is he can engage, he can get in someone's face, he can move in and fight on the inside when he needs to, when he wants to. And if he gets hit, hey, he got back up. It wasn't a fatal blow by any means. Didn't seem to hurt him that badly. He took a hit on the scorecards, but in the end, it didn't matter. So good fight for him. Turned out to be enjoyable to watch. Ray Vargas fight. It was actually entertaining. And yeah, you are right. Boy, Magsayo, he admitted to losing fair and square, kind of did the better man won after the fight. But when he goes back and watches this, he is going to kick himself. At this stage of his career, though, he's young. He's still on the rise. These things frequently teach somebody a whole lot that makes them better. This is not going to be a career killer for him at all. He's still got a lot of promise. He's got, a terrific promotional team behind him. He's one of Manny Pacquiao's fighters. And hey, he's got Sean Givens shilling for him. So he'll be fine. And this opens up a lot more opportunities for Ray Vargas if everybody on the other side of the aisle will play fair with him. But I'm sure we'll talk after this recap about what's next. And I was really surprised who he called out. Stay tuned for that.
Yeah, first of all, Sean Gibbons rooting for him. I don't know if that's a positive or negative, given how much of a lightning rod.
Well, he makes so much damn noise, it means his fighters can't be ignored. And yeah, that's not always a bad thing.
Yeah. It is what it is with him. I'll first of all shout out to Sean Fitzgerald. Thanks for joining us live. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done so. For those who are listening, others who are listening as well, make sure to hit that like and or subscribe button. It'll help the overall algorithms of the show. It'll get us closer and closer to being monetized. I'll go to you, Jacob. As Gail alluded, you also have seen Vargas live, and she mentioned that uh, kind of like a walking boxing bag of no-dos in order to see him go full 12 rounds, but that wasn't the case in this fight. Were you equally as surprised, pleasantly surprised at the strategy of Vargas and your overall assessment of the fight itself?
Yeah, I was really surprised by his strategy. He seemed to want to kind of go toe to toe and not use his attributes as far as like the longer reach and the jab. I mean, he ended up kind of changing his strategy as mentioned. But I was glad to see it. They were first three rounds. They were trying to knock each other's heads off, both of them, and landing some pretty good punches, both sides. So it was shaping up to be an unusual, entertaining fight on the Vargas side. Because I like Gail said, I have seen him a couple times and it hasn't been great. It's been very lackluster. But even on the on the other side with Magsayo, I remember I saw him at a card. It was like a Mexican versus Filipino card at the StubHub, and I was hearing about this guy who's the next Manny Pacquiao. And I remember when I saw him fight, I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. I think the only comparisons you can make is maybe the trainer and the Filipino heritage, but other than that, I don't really see the comparisons. But he did have a big win against Russell. He was game all fight, but I think he made a huge mistake when he had knocked Vargas down, and I thought he had him a little hurt, and he didn't push on the gas and like go for it. And I think he that was his opportunity, and he let Vargas off the hook. He wasn't using his jab. He was, I don't know. I didn't think he had a really good plan B. So, disappointing for him. But like Gail said, he's still young. He still has some options to go through. And I'm glad he took the loss like a man and just said, it wasn't his night. I hate when people come up with there are 10,000 excuses why they didn't win. And if you knew why, what to do, then just do it and win the fight.
Gail hinted at comments that Vargas made during the post fight, so let's get into it now for the both of you. During the post fight interview, they asked Vargas who he wants to fight, and he mentioned the name Leo Santa Cruz, who for some reason still has a belt at featherweight, even though he hasn't fought there in a few years, right? But the interesting thing is, while he mentioned Santa Cruz, on the undercard, you had Brandon Figueroa, who was also a former WBC champion at 122. He fought in a featherweight, WBC featherweight eliminator on the undercard. He stopped a guy by the name of Carlos Castro. So, in theory, if we're going to sanctioning body rules, he should be mandatory. He should be named mandatory very, very soon. While Vargas mentioned Santa Cruz, are we more likely to see him face a Figueroa next before any possible fight with Santa Cruz? I'll go back to you, Jacob, and then you can continue on, Gail.
I kind of think that he'll probably have to face Figueroa before Santa Cruz. I actually think Santa Cruz would whoop his ass in that fight. Figueroa actually has a pretty good chance of beating him too. Again, this version of Vargas that we saw, and I'm not saying he's a bad boxer. I haven't seen anything special about him. So I think if you take him to a place where he's not comfortable, you can win that fight. So Figueroa, I think his guy was undefeated that he beat, I believe, and so based on the rules, he kind of has rightful claim. I know Santa Cruz is maybe the bigger name money fight, but I think that's a dangerous fight for Vargas. Both fights, actually.
Interestingly enough, if we see Vargas go back to the form and the style that we're accustomed to seeing from him, I could see a scenario where he could beat a Santa Cruz, especially one. You just don't know whether Santa Cruz Gail can get back down to 126 comfortably because he's been fighting at higher weights, right? Two, is Santa Cruz really an all-out aggressive, mean kind of fighter? In the same way that Figueroa is. I think I agree with you, Jacob. I think Figueroa will give him hell, whether it's the version of Vargas that we saw this past weekend or the prior version of Vargas. Santa Cruz, yeah, and on the surface, yeah, he would be the favorite. But again, Vargas has that kind of style. He has the length. He has the physical attributes that could give him trouble. I'll go to you, Gail. Your thoughts on who will Ray Vargas fight next? Will it be? Will they try to seek a fight with Santa Cruz, or because of WBC rules, he has to fight Figueroa next?
I think that he will need to go through Figueroa, not just because of the WBC, but because of the Santa Cruz protection program afforded to him by one Mr. Al Heyman. Al and Leo might as well be family. Uh, Al has been a key player, not just in Leo's business life, but his entire family life. One of Leo's kids is named after Al, and Al's been very good to him. So I think he will, set that little, hurdle for Vargas to jump over. Santa Cruz is the name that is the ticket draw. And I'm sure Heyman and PBC know that. But to me, the better fight really is Vargas and the young gun, Figueroa, who's far hungrier. I'm not sure that Santa Cruz has still got that fire. He's been out of the ring. He is on the downside of his career, even though he's certainly not an older fighter. But he's done very well for himself. And this is not meant to damn someone with fate praise, but Leo Santa Cruz has absolutely maximized all his skills in the ring. He's not exceptionally talented, other than really, I think, hand speed and aggression. And those things tend to leave you. But he's made a damn good career for himself. He's a hell of a nice guy. He's got a great family around him. Father's an excellent trainer. Everybody's in the business in his family. He's really maximized his potential, and good for him. Does he still need to be in the mix of a player? Yeah, that's going to be his call. But I think that we're going to see Vargas and Figueroa. Certainly, Figueroa was on that undercard for a reason. He expects to get a nod. He's shown that he's willing to take on stiff competition. And he'd like to prove himself against some other names and try to work his way into a rematch with Fulton, even if he's got to go up a weight division to do it if they all go up. So that's going to also play into it too. Where do they settle on the weight scale? Is Santa Cruz going to stay at this division? He's kind of a tall, lanky guy for, right here, but not to the extent that Vargas is. Yeah, there's a lot of things in play here. We'll see him shake out, but Santa Cruz kind of came, as a call out to me from left field. It really did. Plus, you've got the whole Mexican on Mexican American scenario, and frequently Mexican fighters don't like to take each other down. So we'll see what happens.
I see Daniel from the Inscriber for Boxing News has joined us. You're listening to episode 370 of Pound for Pound Boxing Report, and we're talking about Ray Vargas winning over Magsayo to capture the WBC featherweight title. And specifically, Daniel, we're having a conversation about Vargas and his post-fight comments, in which he said that they're looking to make a bout with Leo Santa Cruz, but Brandon Figueroa on the undercard won in a WBC title eliminator. And I just send the question to you that Gail and Jacob and myself just talked about. Do you see moving forward Do you think that Vargas will indeed go forth and try to make a fight with Santa Cruz, or because of obligations with the WBC, will he be forced to fight a Figueroa first?
I would probably say right now, because of the relationship Al Heyman has with Leo Santa Cruz and the way he was treating him right, and this is potentially probably one of the last few paydays that he could have. I would say probably move forward more with the Santa Cruz offer, because first it's a title unification, so that always at the tillery toucher rather than the mandatory, and there's always going to be the option there for the Mexican American fight with Cain Figueroa, as long as he stays undefeated. Main thing though now is get Santa Cruz a decent payday, get him a high caliber fight, and this fight would be it, because Vargas did show very, very well that he could fight in this division. And unlike what he did in 122, he was a little bit more aggressive, even though it technically cost him a knockdown in this fight. But he was still more aggressive, but he also used his height, his reach. In this fight, he made Magsayo really try to work in to try to hurt him. And with Santa Cruz, it's a similar aspect now, where you get a long, lanky fighter who does not use his advantages as much as he used to. And also will try to bang. He won't try to make it a boxing match, and that actually favors Vargas. With Figueroa, the kid's hungry. You can tell that the kid is willing to dig deep, even when he's hurt, to power through an attack to the body, which Magsayo, even though she lost the fight, showed that Vargas is somewhat vulnerable in that area. So I would probably say Santa Cruz would probably be the better bet. But unless Figueroa makes a stink, and the only way I can see Figueroa makes a stink is if he has another management team.
I tend to agree with Gail and Jacob on this one. They wouldn't, WB, that fight with Figueroa would not be on the undercard of a WBC championship fight if there wasn't already plans to have the winner, which is Vargas, fight the winner of that eliminator, which is Figueroa. I hear what you're saying about Leo Santa Cruz, but as something, I'll allude to something Gail said earlier, and I'm gonna paraphrase the late Marvin Hagler, who said essentially, it's hard to get motivated when you wake up wearing silk pajamas. Santa Cruz, he's a millionaire right now, and as Gail noted, Al Heyman has been very, very favorable towards him in and out of the ring. And if you've watched Santa Cruz post knockout loss to Tank Davis, I think that was Halloween 2020, I believe that was. You see him at fights. I don't see the eye of the tiger in him anymore. I don't see signs that he still has the fire in the belly. Yeah, he's talking about fighting, but I don't get the I don't get the vibe that he is really he really has the fighter's spirit, the mentality, that he still has the pit bull in him. So I'm still questioning him to that point. Figueroa, he got it. He still has it, particularly post loss. Some felt he won against Fulton last year. He still just wants to fight, and if he gets Vargas, I think he's, like I said earlier, I think he's going to give him hell. We'll see what happens next in terms of Ray Vargas. Let's move on to another bout that took place this weekend. Let's took place, I believe, at the O2 in London, a rematch between Derek Chisora and Kubrat Pulev. I haven't seen all of this fight because I was at work while it was happening. I'll go to you, Jacob or Daniel, if you two, any of you saw it. Chisora, he ended up winning by a split decision to Twitter at Chisora. I'll be the contrarian here and say, because it's shout out to Bo. He kind of flipped my head over this during a discussion that we had on Three Kings Boxing Twitter space. Please check out threekingsboxing.com, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the crew. Bo, who you heard been on the show, who's been on this show numerous times. Senior writer, head of media relations, 2K, the man behind the scenes, the man that's all Three Kings right now. Myself, Bakari, Jarrell, fellow senior writers, Red, who's the editor, who does all the editing behind the scenes. Bo kind of flipped my head on this when he said that given Wilder's 2 losses to Fury, you just don't know where he's at. And it will be a good thing for Wilder to make the fight with Chisora, particularly if the fight happens in the UK. And it will make good money over there. So I kind of turned things around and say, I wouldn't mind seeing the fight. That's on the one hand. For me, Pulev, it's time for him to hang it up. Based on the comments and the highlights that I've seen, he just doesn't have it. He just doesn't have it anymore. And if you don't have it anymore, why continue fighting? Your thoughts first, Jacob, and then Daniel.
Yeah, this fight was, I don't know, kind of, I mean, it was entertaining in pockets, and I did like the body work that Chisora was doing. He was pounding the body pretty hard. But to your point, the Pulev, there were so many opportunities. I thought he could have done more and put Chisora away. Especially when he had him on the ropes, and he just kind of, kind of using the ropes to swing around and whatnot. But it didn't seem like Pulev was putting anything into his punches. I mean, he landed one good uppercut, I want to say, in like the 8th round or something like that, that put Chisora on his heels. But Chisora looked like, I mean, I give the guy props because, I mean, I know he's got the moniker of war, and, he's a what do you call it, the fan favorite. But, man, he looks old in there. He looks kind of like, I don't know, man. Sometimes I'm a little worried about him. So I think a Wilder fight, I don't know. I think Wilder might spark him like pretty hard. Chisora, I mean, he seems like a good guy in the sense of, he wants to fight and stay active and whatnot. But I think his better days are behind him, and he's, I don't think he's ever going to be like that champion or anything like that. So this was kind of I guess an entertaining fight for what it was, more entertaining than the first fight. But, I don't know. It was kind of in the end, it was kind of lackluster in the sense that Pulev didn't look like he was putting too much effort into it. So I agree with you. He should hang it up. There's nothing really left for him to do.
This was not entertaining, to say the least. Mainly because it turned out just to be, in many ways, a carbon copy of the first fight, or a typical Chisora fight. Chisora came in, guns blazing, tried to attack Pulev, and this is probably the part where Pulev would probably regretting taking the fight so soon after that little Triller business, because he obviously could tell like he was still fatigued somewhat, even though he landed a couple of good shots against Chisora. But typical Chisora fight, he comes in guns blazing, starts teetering off a little bit in the middle rounds, but then tries to get a second win going, which is pretty much what happened. And nothing in this fight would put you in the avenue of saying, okay, Del Boy has at least one good run left in him, or at least a couple of good fights left in him, which is fortunately sad, but he's at the point where he is what he is at this point. A gatekeeper who is going to be a stepping stone for UK fighters to go through before they either challenge at the European level or challenge at the world level, which is not a bad position to have. But at the same time, it's also unfortunately a position where Del Boy is unfortunately going to probably think he's still a world caliber fighter. And I really don't see it at this point.
I just don't either. If Chisora indeed fights Wilder, depending on what Wilder's going to do next, I'm not mad at it. But again, with Pulev, I don't want to see him no more. If he decides to fight on, fair enough. But who really wants it at this point? Who outside of him and maybe his close associates? I'm just so man, on him fighting again. I just don't want to see it. Let's move on to some news here, and I'm going to start with this first. I forgot to put this in the docket, in the description for those who are checking us out live on YouTube. Let's start with ladies first here. I'll go back to you, Daniel, and then Gail, Jacob. You can carry on with the conversation. Big news when it comes to women's boxing. We know that Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall are going to fight September 10th at the O2 Arena. We also found out that on the undercard, unification bout when it comes to 130 pounds. Michaela Mayer, who holds the BO IBF titles at 130, her and Alicia Baumgartner, who holds the WBC belt, they agreed to a fight. They agreed to a deal. They've been talking a whole lot of smack towards each other on social media and in interviews. Well, come to find out now that they are going to fight on the undercard of Shields and Mayer September 10th on the O2 Arena. I, as well as Gail, had the pleasure of being part of the Top Rank announcement, which had Shields and Marshall, which had Mayer there. Baumgartner unfortunately had some technical issues, wasn't able to make it. But this is big news when it comes to women boxing. I love it. Mayer, Baumgartner, they get to settle their beef on the undercard of Shields Mayer September 10th. It's going to be a big night for women's boxing, Daniel. A big night.
Yeah, and these were two fights that we have been dying to get this year. Mainly the Claressa fight. That one we've been waiting for her and Savannah Marshall for a while now, mainly because they've been dancing around each other. There's been delays, and the intrigue is there. And the trash talk's already begun. I think Marshall's saying that she had to come to the UK because Claressa Shields can't sell tickets in the US, which, while somewhat factually correct, still doesn't discount the fact that Claressa in that division is probably the best women's fighter in those divisions. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how we are going to look at this fight coming into it in the UK. And speaking of trash talk, Mayer and Baumgartner, particularly Baumgartner's trainer, that is going to be fun now. Obviously, they've already discussed, they've already started on Twitter because of said absence from Zoom. But this is going to be a very, very interesting fight because obviously Baumgartner is the older fighter, 37, but she's going to go in with a chip on her shoulder. Mayer.
Wait a minute.
Bumgardner
Bumgardner is the younger fighter. She's only like 27, 28.
27? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm
27,
thinking
28.
somebody else, so I think it's about 37. Oh, no, I'm thinking about the insult that Mayer threw at the manager.
Ah.
Because that, like I said, that Twitter battle was getting pretty fun. But that is going to be a very fun fight to have because Mayer has seen what Taylor Serrano brought as far as limelight, as far as visibility to women's boxing, and she wants to be one of the new faces for it. And in the era where we're seeing more and more consolidation of championships, which is a very good thing, why not get into it and get into it in a division where you can lean on it for a long time? Because Michaela doesn't look like she's having trouble, a lot of trouble trying to make 130 to get to 135. It doesn't look like Ms. Mayer's having any issues on that front. So that's going to be telling when it came to that fight. As far as the Clarissa and Marshall, that's going to be interesting mainly because of that amateur battle that they had, and the fact that Marshall can talk a lot of smack. So this is going to be a good couple sets of fights for women's boxing. I'm just hoping some way, some fashion, we can get the 3-minute rounds for both of these fights.
Indeed. Gail having some technical issues, so hopefully she can get back on in a few minutes. Because Bumgardner was not there for the kickoff press event for Top Rank, Mayer basically had the floor all to herself for a good 25 minutes. And yeah, she went off on Bumgardner, saying that her win, her title win over Terry Harper was basically an easy fight, right? And then she talked about how why the fight is happening in England. I wish Bumgardner was there to respond. Because Gail is not here with us right now, I'll go to you, Jacob. Your thoughts on the fight that Mayer, Bumgardner, Taylor, Marshall, Shields, all going to happen on the same night, on the same card.
It's awesome. I can't freaking wait for this. As much as I was excited for the Taylor Serrano fight, and as much as I was writing on it, and they totally delivered, I think that this will also deliver. There's tons of bad blood on both fights, both sides. I love the smack talking. I love the bravado. I love the, just what they're doing to, unify the divisions and consolidate titles and, fighting when they're in their prime and all these things. I think this is all great for women's boxing. I agree with Daniel, though. They need to make this. They should have done this a long time ago. The Serrano Taylor fight should have been 3-minute rounds. But, there's no reason it shouldn't be 3-minute rounds. It would be beneficial on all parties and on all sorts to get, an actual, not to say that's not an actual fight, but to get a true, just boxing the way it should be done. The Mayor, she was funny. She was saying something like, I think to the effect of, well, if she can't figure out Zoom, how is she going to figure out me? And so I thought that was a pretty
that was messed up on her part. That was cold. Funny, but cold.
Yeah, but again, to give Mayer some credit though, she did say she's like, Bumgardner she's a good fighter. I'm not saying she's a bad fighter, but she thinks she's very one-dimensional. She does one thing very well, and that she thinks that she does a lot of things very, very well. So I'm really impressed with Mayer. After that was it Kamadouche fight, I was really impressed the way she was able to stick in there and take hard shots and just press that fight. And that was like the fight of the year for me on that last year when it happened. But I favor her in this fight, but I think it'll be a good fight. And then the Shields Marshall fight, I favor Shields. I got to go with Shields. I think it'll be a good fight. Hopefully, Marshall's power, can maybe scare Shields for a second here and make it interesting. But I think all four people will put up a good performance and put themselves out there and really cement this year that has been strong for women's boxing and really showing that they have they're doing a lot of the things that the men aren't doing, and the sense of and I know it's more common now. I mean, we're seeing a lot more unified divisions and champions fighting champions, but they're doing a lot. They're for the limited amount of I guess people in the weight classes. I know it's kind of hard to find names and whatnot. It seems like they are doing a lot. So my hat's off to them. I'm super excited for this fight. I can't wait for it. September. So can't get here fast enough.
Jacob mentioned, Gail, that 2022 has been an outstanding a year for women's boxing. You had Taylor Serrano in April. One of the fights of the year, men or women, it doesn't matter. It was an outstanding contest. The standout year for women boxing, it continues with this terrific card.
It really does. Frequently in sports, you get a critical mass and somebody breaks through, and it's almost as if they're, rock climbing, they're leading the charge. They reach down their hand below and pull the next person up with them. And that's a sensation I get for women's boxing right now. We've had some of these great champions, all action fighters, the Amanda Serranos, the Katie Taylors, the Claressa Shields, the Sinisa Estradas, the Alicia Baumgartners, the McCaskells, all feeding off each other, all learning from each other in the business. And now add Michaela Mayer to that mix. And suddenly it seems like a trend. It reminds me of I'm trying to think now, Jacob can help me out with this, 4 or 5 years ago when the super flyweight division came on and HBO and promoter Tom Loeffler came up with the great idea of those super fly tournaments. And suddenly the lower weight divisions had eyes on them, delivered great fights, and suddenly people who had never paid attention to anyone below welterweight were watching all of these great fighters, most of whom are still with us now, headlining great cards. And I feel it's the same kind of pushing over the hump that women's boxing is doing now. So I'm super pleased to see it. I love the fact this is an all women's card. That's a very interesting test. With 2-minute rounds, which it will be, that's another story. These fights are going to just clip right along. I have a feeling that they're going to load up the undercard and just crank out these fights. It's going to be a great value for the ticket. I like the edge on both these fighters trash talking each other. They were not landing any low blows. All the blows they were landing were completely legal above the belt. And that speaks well to what we're going to see. They're both very invested, and they're taking it seriously.
And shout out to everybody involved in making these two fights happen, this event happen. Be it Shalom and Sky bringing Shields and Marshall together, be it Eddie Hearn with Matchroom, Top Rank with Top Rank in terms of Mayer, Eddie Hearn in terms of Baumgartner. They all came together to make this card of these fights in this card of reality. As Gail mentioned, this is going to be an all women's card. As of right now, I don't know the other women that's going to be featured on this, but overall, this is going to be a top-notch event, top-notch fight. I can't wait for it. I can't wait until it happens. And I'm just thinking out loud, Gail. Last year, our Ladies Love Boxing series the episode in 2021 was one of my all-time favorite episodes here on the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. And I'm just thinking out loud, and for anybody who's watching, I'm thinking about having the latest Love Boxing episode. I'm really thinking about centering it around this card, just putting it out there in the atmosphere. I'm really thinking about having the next Ladies Love, all ladies episode around this card.
Yeah, we've got to do it. And you're absolutely right. Kudos to everybody involved. There had to be a lot of promoters willing to work together to make all this happen. The fighters all had to say yes to these high-level fights, and they all did. Gentlemen, take notice.
Indeed. I'm going back to you, Gail, for this other news story. Word on the street is that Jermell Charlo, undisputed champion at 154 pounds, he on his IG, he hinted that a date is coming for his upcoming fight against mandatory challenger Tszyu. Word has sprung, and we wrote about this on Three Kings, that the fight is going to happen January 2023. There's an interview out there that Tszyu that said, in which he said that he's going to move his base of operations to Las Vegas. So that's another kind of hint of where the fight will happen. But yeah, it looks like Charlo Tszyu not going to happen immediately, but it is going to happen. Your thoughts on this? This word that's been going around, that they're going to wait all the way till January of next year to fight.
I absolutely hate rumor, sources say, word is. Believe it when it's announced. Believe it when somebody shows you a signed contract. Just because Tszyu is moving to Las Vegas, where there is a critical mass of Australian fighters who train, Joseph Parker, the Maloney brothers, where else is he going to train in the United States? He's going to feel very comfortable there. That's where he'd go no matter what was going to happen or where it was going to happen. So if he wants to get ready, if he wants to tee himself up another fight in the United States, whether or not it's Charlo, he's getting started. Good for him. We're talking about a rumor of a fight in January. It's July. Everybody calm down. I'd love to see this fight. I love the matchup, but this is not a news story yet to me.
Jacob, Daniel, quick word on this, on kind of this buzz around Charlo Tszyu happening early next year.
I mean, for me, I wasn't really that impressed with Tszyu. I still think he needs I don't feel like he's really earned his shot. So, I mean, I'm not too excited about the fight. But, I mean, obviously I want fighters to stay active and to fight and, step up their competition and whatnot. But to tell you the truth, I'd rather see Fundora fight Charlo than Tszyu at this point.
It's understandable, considering, like I said, all the situations that you need to fall into it. The only thing that's still unsure about this fight is, even though, like I said, Tszyu moving to Las Vegas, are they going to try to have to fight in the United States, or are they going to have to try to have the fight in Australia? Because there's still different rules when it comes to quarantine. There's still different rules as far as isolation that you have to follow when it comes to this fight. And waiting until January, we don't know fully yet if that's the case. Like Yale did mention, we haven't seen any contract. I wouldn't be surprised if they would do it at that point, because at the end of the day, Jermell, they're both a team. And even though they have different trainers, they're going to want to focus and help each other out in their prospective fights. And it's not, in this case, it's not that bad to wait when it comes to this division, because, like Jacob mentioned, Tszyu's still a little green. there isn't a ready-made challenger at 154 for Mel right now because we don't know what Danny Garcia is going to bring into this. We don't know Benavides is going to try to bring anything to this. It's an open field right now. So why not wait a little bit till it clears out? You do have a mandatory, but if you handle that mandatory well, hopefully by then you'll have a clear picture of who your next challenger is going to be.
Yeah, a lot of just word here, word there. Nothing has been confirmed. Like I said, wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. We'll keep you updated here on Pound for Pound Boxing Report and over on Three Kings Boxing.com, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Let's move on and get kind of to the meat of this particular episode this evening. Our mid-year uh, recap analysis of the Sweet Science. Going to have some categories here: Fighter of the Year, Fight of the Year, Breakout Star, Prospect of the Year, um, Knockout Upset of the Year, um, what to expect for 2022. And I think Jacob mentioned another category for Trainer of the Year as well. Before we get on to that, Daniel, you mentioned possible unification at flyweight. A quick word on that, please. You mentioned it here in the private chat, Daniel. Possible flyweight unification bout happening. Quick word on that.
Yeah, it does look like it's going to be set in the fall. Cesar Martinez and Sonny Edwards have an unification fight at flyweight, which is very telling fight with direction where Martinez is going to go. Obviously, Sonny Edwards has defended his titles fairly well, decently, although not in the most exciting fashion. And we know Martinez, unfortunately, is still some coming off of that. While valiant effort, ultimately, that wide loss to Chocolatito. So this is going to be a very interesting fight to go. Now, the question's going to be, though, can he make weight? In this case, can he do it? Because we've seen now Martinez has not, ever since trying to make the move, has not exactly looked exemplary when it comes to making weight. So if this is finalized, and it looks like to be finalized in the fall, if it does happen, this is going to be a very decent test for Martinez. The main thing now is we have to see is whether or not he can make the weight.
And I question whether he can make weight. His last fight was against Roman Gonzalez earlier this spring. Even though he was moving up to 115 pounds, he weighed 2 pounds over at the official weigh-in, and we saw how he got beat up in that fight. He had to bow out of the fight with Arroyo once again for the third time, and he had issues getting down to 115 pounds. Though he has a belt at 112, I too have serious questions whether he can make that flyweight limit. If it comes off, yeah, but I just wonder if he's even able to make 112 pounds. How strong will he be at that weight? And he's going to need to be at full strength to chase down the ever moving Edwards in that fight, who's been talking about wanting to fight Cesar Martinez really all of this year. We'll see where it happens. We'll keep you updated on that situation. Again, let's go back to kind of our mid-year recap. Let's start with Breakout Star, the Breakout Star of 2022. I'll take this one. To me, this was kind of obvious. Um, a fighter who is now a champion at 115 pounds. We've talked about him a lot on Pound for Pound Boxing Report, and that is Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Rodriguez, for those who don't know the story, he was a top-ranked contender at 108 pounds, got the call on 6 days' notice to fight Carlos Quadras for the vacant WBC belt at 115. Won. First defense was just a couple of weeks ago as he took apart former two-time champion Chisora Rungvisai. Bam Rodriguez has been getting a lot of talk among hardcore heads for years now about how he's the next up and coming. And coming off of these 2 wins, Gail, he certainly looks to be a future star in the lower weight rankings. Yeah, his rise this year has been meteoric.
Yep, no argument there. He's a star now. He's going to be coming back on the undercard of the Canelo Golovkin 3 trilogy card. Genius to put him there in Las Vegas with that big spotlight. You know, this is a guy who absolutely is fearless about taking a chance on himself. And in his eyes, he so believes in what he can do and is so good. His baseline skills are so sharp, yet he's still learning, which is making him incredibly formidable. I mean, he sees no reason not to push forward and challenge himself at every turn, and it is paying off like crazy. Again, fighters, look at this kid. Look at this 22-year-old who's got the skills and the confidence and putting it all together, doing the work and getting the payoff. And he's exciting to watch. He's a great interview. He always credits not just trainer Robert Garcia, but the entire RGBA team. He makes a point of that. And he's got his brother, Joshua Franco, also in the mix. It's just going to be exciting to watch and see where he goes. And the upside of being a multi-division champion, it's going to be interesting to see how far he can go. He states utmost confidence that he'll be a champion at least up to 126. I don't know. He might even push past that. It'll be a lot of fun to watch. We are all very lucky to see it.
And it was announced yesterday that Bam, returning to the ring, he's going to fight on the Canelo Golovkin 3 undercard. He's going to fight Israel Gonzalez, making second defense of his title. I go to you, Jacob, your breakout star for 2022.
I mean,
your breakout fighter for 2022. Excuse me.
It's the same one as Bam. It's obvious choice. The guy beats Quadros, and then comes in and beats the feared Rungvisai, stops him. To me, it's an obvious choice. You guys have good picks, and you guys already said it. This kid has nothing but a bright future, and some competition. I think some really good fights that could be made. So I'm super excited for him and what's going to come in the next half of the year to end 2023.
Is this going to be unanimous here, Daniel?
It cannot be anything other than unanimous when it comes to what we've seen Bam do. Think about it, going from 108 to 150 to the cream of the crop of 115 on emergency notice. And then not only beating Quadros with the way he did, but then going to the next fight against Rungvisai. Yeah, we can say all we want that. Yeah, it was an old Rungvisai. He wasn't there. But the fact of the matter is he beat him much better than we beat Quadros. And he showed he has the killer instinct. He recognizes when somebody's hurt and he's willing to close the show. And for a kid like that coming this year, not even in his mid-20s, to come in that fashion, that fast, and in the division that's right now still one of the glamour divisions in the sport, there's no other choice.
Indeed, I think so. It's going to be unanimous here in terms of breakthrough of fighter of the year. Let's go to prospect of the year. Let's get the conversation started with you, Gail.
Before this discussion and earlier in the year, I would have said it was Bam Rodriguez because, his rise, he just kind of blown straight past prospect. His trajectory has been so fast without these two opportunities that he's taken and done such a good job. You could say he was prospect of the year. This is one where I'm struggling a little bit to figure out who the right choice is, and it's always difficult, the definition of a prospect. I think Xander Zayas is probably past prospect stage at this point, if we can still consider him a prospect. His upside is may not quite rise to where Bam's is, but it's pretty darn impressive. Of the Puerto Rican youngsters that Top Rank is trying to promote, he's the one that's the goods. He's the one that needs to be at the head of cards. We'll be seeing him back in the ring here pretty quickly. I actually think in this case, even though she's had very few fights, I am going to name Australian boxer Sky Nicholson as prospect of the year. She is an Australian Olympian. She's been taken under the wing of Matchroom Boxing and Eddie Hearn, who has put her front and center on the card this past weekend. She was there. She was making the rounds. She was briefly in the commentary box chatting up the fight. They put a lot of money, they put a lot of bets on her. They're putting a lot of time into her. She's looked good. She is still learning on the job a little bit, but she's tremendously appealing. She does have power. She's a tall, rangy young woman, which means that she could potentially, rise up 3 more weight divisions. Trying to think where she is now at bantamweight, I believe. So I'm going to throw it to Sky Nicholson.
What say you, Jacob?
This is for prospect, correct?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Zanabek Alamikonali, whatever his last name is.
Even though he has an interim world belt?
Mm-hmm. Alan Canuli, but everyone's calling him Zanabek.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interim. I mean, he doesn't have that many fights. He's I don't know. To me, I'm going to call him my prospect. Even though it's an interim, I mean, I don't really like interim titles, to be honest with you. Like, it's either you fight for it or you don't. Like, I hate that whole interim thing. But I don't know. He hasn't had that many fights. He's been around since 2016. I think he's definitely a contender, and he's a dangerous guy. And so I don't think a lot of people know about him. Maybe the hardcores, but not a lot of other people know about him. He doesn't have like a name so much, so to speak. But he's gonna be my prospect.
Your prospect of the year so far, Daniel.
It's a name that Gail mentioned earlier, Xander Zayas. It's mainly because of where he's still somewhat positioned on the card. Even though skill-wise, he's probably the best. No, he is the best Puerto Rican prospect that Top Rank has. Is still the way he's positioned on the card. We saw the last card that was supposed to be in. Edgar Berlanga was still the headliner, even though we pretty much know at this stage that Berlanga should not be a headliner. But because of the position, he's there at the card, and unfortunately, I agree with you with Genovic. He's technically is a world champion. He probably could be a full champion, depending on what Andre winds up doing. So that still lifts him up. So I would say Xander right now, because if it wasn't for Bam's blitz, if it wasn't for the way he blitzed this year, it probably would have been Bam, but I would say Xander.
I'm going different here. a lot of people would say Keyshawn Davis, who was a silver medalist in the Tokyo Olympics last year. But I'm going with another fighter from kind of that United States class, and that is Bruce Carrington, who was bypassed, who was bypassed by the United States Olympic Committee to represent the featherweight division um, for the Tokyo Olympics in favor of Duke Reagan. I believe Reagan won a medal, but I've seen Carrington fight. I think he is an outstanding prospect, a real physical force in the featherweight division. Um, he has skill, he has power, he has athleticism. 5'8" with a 72-inch reach. Uh, uh, Monster physical attributes for a fighter that tall, for a fighter that small. Excuse me. Big broad shoulder. I like his combinations. I really think he has. I really think there's a he has a legit future. I see world title potential if he keeps his head on straight. So for me, I am going with Bruce Carrington, who fights out of, who's been signed up by Top Rank. Let's go from prospect of the year to knockout of the year. I'll go to you on this one. Uh, um, I go to you on this one, Gail. Once again, your choice for knockout of the year.
We've had some really good choices, and with quite a few more months left, I'm hoping we'll have some more candidates. But right now, um, when I select knockout of the year, there's lots of great punches that are, one hitter quitters, exciting to see. But I like them when the punch is exceptionally meaningful in the context of the fight and the fighter. And I got to hand it to Joe Cordina for a I mean, perfectly timed right hand that took out Kenichi Ogawa in Cardiff in front of his hometown fans. It was the punch was explosive, the reaction was explosive, and it won him his first world title. He took Ogawa's IBF super featherweight title. I mean, it was just stunning. And Cordina was definitely the underdog in this fight as well. It was just Ogawa's second loss, and it was a brutal loss, and it was a brutal knockout. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty easy to find. It only happened a month ago, early June. So go look it up. Do yourself a favor. I think the Zone has it, clip of it posted on its Twitter feed. Absolutely spectacular. That gets my nod.
You stole my choice. That was my choice right there, Cordina.
Yep.
Who stopped Ogawa? The irony is that Cordina has had a history of issues with the right hand, and it was the right hand one hitter quitter style that put Ogawa down. He couldn't recover, and yeah, Joe Cordina is certainly a hot name at 130 pounds. Um, New IBF junior lightweight champion of the world. I go to you, Jacob and Daniel. Your choices for knockout of the year so far in 2022.
This one was easy for me. Lee Wood versus Michael Conlon. Like Gail said, I like her. This was meaningful. Lee Wood seemed like he was all but going to lose that fight after I think getting knocked down in the second round or the first round, so early on. And for him to come back, I think it was the 11th round.
Yeah.
Final round.
Oh, it was the final round?
That's right. It was the final round. Yeah.
Okay. Final round.
Makes it even better. Makes it even final round, like towards the end of the round, and to get him on the ropes, and he knocked him out. I mean, Conlon was unconscious, kind of a scary moment, fell through the ropes, and it was just in that crowd, and just I just remember watching it on TV. And I was just like, it reminded me long time ago when I was watching the Diego Corrales versus Luis Castillo on the TV, and just watching that whole fight and the ebbs and flows, and then for it, the way it ended, it's one of those things that you just kind of remember. So that's my knockout of the year so far.
Yeah, I might have considered that for fight of the year. I didn't think of that as knockout of the year. For those who have not seen it, Conlon put Wood down with a straight left hand, put him flat on his back. Didn't look like he was going to recover, but slowly but surely, he kind of inched his way back into the fight. Heading into the last round, he was behind on the scorecards, Wood, but along the ropes, he caught Conlon with a right hand that kind of short circuit his senses. Follow-up combinations not only put Conlon down, put him through the ropes. He fell through the ring. Had to take him to the hospital. Fortunately, I should say, he's okay. Conlon's returning to the ring in August. But yeah, I didn't think of that as knockout of the year, but it's certainly understandable why that is your choice. I go to you, Daniel. Knockout of the year so far.
Lee Wood, that's a tempting option, but I have to go with Cardino Ogawa, just because it was the perfect punch at the perfect time. That beautiful right hand landed flush, and Ogawa was out the very next second. That's when true knockout is really about. Just from the moment that you land, that person has absolutely no chance of getting up. And that's been what happened in this fight. And not to mention the historic aspect of it, winning in Wales, having the crowd behind him. Wow. Aesthetically pleasing as the Lee Wood Conlon knockout was, because he made Conlon pull a Bernard Hopkins and getting out of the ring. But the fact that it was for a world title, and the fact that he was the massive underdog in this fight, I have to go Cardino.
Jacob, you mentioned here in the private chat, so let's go with it right now. Trainer of the year. Let's start the conversation with you, Jacob.
Yeah, I have to go with Derek James. Errol Spence, Charlo, unifying the division, Spence getting that one of the other belts. To me, this is a pretty easy one too.
What say you, Gail?
It's interesting. I at this very moment, if the competition ended tomorrow, I would absolutely say Derek James. However, I think Robert Garcia is going to make a strong bid because of Bam Rodriguez's accomplishments, and I'm very interested to see what he can do with Anthony Joshua, to say nothing of, the huge number of other guys in his stable. So I think Robert Garcia is going to make a pretty strong bid. And you could also put Joel Diaz in the mix, particularly for his work alongside Dmitry Bivol's longtime trainer, Gennady Masyanov. Diaz really did engineer the perfect game plan for Bivol. So, depending on where Bivol goes before the end of the year, I think for once, the one thing I can say for the first time in quite a few years is that Eddie Reynoso is not going to be a candidate.
Yep, he ain't going to be a candidate for a while. Maybe the second half of the year he might be. What, Mike?
I didn't say anything. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, but to me, so far, Derek James, because of what they were able to accomplish with Mel and Spence. Particularly Mel becoming undisputed in a division that wasn't unified before the 4-belt era. And just being patient, sticking with the game plan, and just letting Mel land that perfect punch that he needed to land. And
I will have to agree with Derek James, what he's done with Charlo, the comeback of Spence and how good he looked in his win over Ugas. James doesn't get enough credit, in my opinion, in terms of how good he is, how well he works with fighters. I kind of low key think that Joshua would have been better served with James as his trainer, as opposed to Robert Garcia. This is no diss to Robert Garcia. It's just my opinion because I think so highly of James, and I think they could have done some magic together. But yeah, I agree with Daniel and Jacob on this one. Trainer of the year so far in 2022, uh, uh, the trainer from Texas himself, um, one Derek James. Let's go to women's fighter of the year. I'll get this one going for me. At this point, it's kind of obvious. You have to go. I have to go with Katie Taylor. Um, her fight with Serrano was heavily hyped. Um, at the big room in Madison Square Garden. Um, I know Daniel thinks that Serrano won, but the fight lived up to expectation after getting badly hurt in rounds 5, 6, right? Uh, Taylor rallied and got the decision. She showed the heart, the grit, the determination of a true champion. Her profile has risen in the aftermath of this fight. She is a mainstream fighter now, men and women. Uh, Not just women fighters give her much respect, but the dudes, the fellas, give her major respect. Shakur Stevenson fought Valdez on the same night as Taylor and Serrano, and he was like, "Listen, man, look, let the ladies have their shine. Give Katie Taylor her flowers everywhere she goes, every event she goes to right now. Everyone's giving it up to her based on that performance. I think right now, in my opinion, right now, there's no question about it. This can change given the outcome of Shields and Marshall and Mayer and Baumgartner in September. But as of right now, I think it's clear cut. Katie Taylor, Women's Fighter of the Year. I'll go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts on Women's Fighter of the Year?
I want to say Amanda Serrano. I really, really do, because you're right. I still believe she won that fight. But given that it was the record, given that on paper she did win the fight, and given the fact that this shattered any ceiling that you had about women's boxing main eventing major arenas and providing excitement, even if it was just 2-minute rounds, you had to give it to Taylor. You have to give it to Taylor right now. So far this year, she's has the big her and Amanda have had the biggest impact in this entire sport when it comes to moving women's boxing forward. With that fight alone, it's a fight where there was really no loser. Amanda's profile is elevated because of this fight. Obviously, Taylor, by winning hers, is elevated as well, and has raised the stakes for other fights as well. Because look where we're gonna have now. We're gonna have Shields versus Marshall. We're gonna have Mayer versus Baumgartner, and we may have other fights coming up, including the rematch that I desperately want to see just because of my own greedy reasons. But this put women's boxing on the map. We do have to give Katie Taylor her flowers, even though deep down I believe she lost the fight.
Jacob, your thoughts on Women's Fighter of the Year so far at the midway point?
Daniel, I'm disappointed with you. You know what? I don't care on paper who won the fight. I care who I think won the fight. Serrano won that fight. Serrano is the Women's Fighter of the Year, in my opinion. If it was a 3-round fight, she would have finished Taylor. 3-round fight, but she would have finished Taylor. I'm very confident, but I still think she won that fight. Not to take anything away from Taylor, it was both of them. They showed up. They put up an awesome fight, but again, I'm not going to follow the judges and all that stuff. I'm going to go by what I see and what I feel. And Serrano's the Fighter of the Year for me.
What say you, Gail?
Daniel put it really well. I do think Serrano won that fight, but for all the reasons stated, for the stakes, and because she primarily made the entire event possible. and a little bit to reward her for a tremendous legacy already in the sport. Katie Taylor, gotta be.
Let's move on to fight of the year. I'll go back to you, Gail. Your 2022 midway point fight of the year.
It is Taylor versus Serrano, and I'm not differentiating between women and men. It was an exciting event. It was historic. It filled the garden. It got the buzz. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone's still talking about it. We've got a somewhat disputed decision, and everyone is eager to see it again. Not just because there's disagreement about who really won, but because everyone can't wait to see it again. It was that good. Fight of the year. And it'll be hard to top it with anything else.
Daniel?
Let's make it two. As much as there were some other fights, obviously Bivol Canelo is in the contention just because of what the winner came in. The impact that Taylor Serrano had alone makes it right now the fight of the year. It'll probably stay fight of the year, barring Tyson Fury deciding to fight Usyk. That's the only thing right now that could change my mind as far as making this. But the impact alone, it has to be Taylor Serrano, and hopefully we get more of this caliber fights in the second half of the year.
Fight of the year for 2022, Jacob, at the halfway point.
Three's a crowd. It's easily Serrano Taylor for me. Like Gail said, I'm taking everything in consideration. Doesn't matter, men, women, whatever. They put on an awesome fight. They showed up when the spotlight was on them, both of them. They sold out the Garden. They just did so much, paved the way for this awesome card in September. So, I give my hats off to them. I would love to, see a rematch with 3-minute rounds, but I'd love to see a rematch. But I got to give it to them. It's, to me, another easy pick.
This is about to be unanimous right here in terms of fight of the year. Taylor Serrano, I don't think it's any. It's not even a close second place as far as I'm concerned. When you in that kind of situation where the anticipation is high, the spotlight is on you, you expected to perform and put on the show, and each lady did that in full, in droves. I know Daniel and Jacob feel strongly that Serrano won, but the fight overall, both ladies brought it. People want to see it again. This is an easy one for me. Just like a breakthrough fight of the year, the fight of the year is easy for me at this point. Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, and they got paid very well. At the gate, both of them earned $1 million+ at least. It lived up to expectations and then some. No question about it. Last category here, fighter of the year so far in 2022 at the midway point. I'll go back to you, Jacob. Who you got?
Okay. This one's a tough one. I mean, part of me wants to give it to Bam because of what he accomplished and how he accomplished it. But there's also another guy, even though he had one fight so far this year, that did something that I think shouldn't be overlooked, which is Inoue. And since I gave Bam the breakout fight of the year, I'm going to give it to Inoue. And the reason is because of their first fight was such a great fight. And I really thought, Danier was going to put up much of a fight, but Inoue he cut through him like butter. And to me, when you are a a fighter of that caliber and you're facing a guy, a formidable opponent like that, and you dispatch of him so basically easily, I gotta take notice. So I'm gonna say anyway.
Before you go on to to Daniel and Gail, I'm gonna have a change of opinion. I had Cordina as knockout of the year. Given the fight that Jacob just mentioned, I'm gonna change my mind. Um, I'm gonna switch and say Inoue's knockout of Donaire was my knockout of the year. That was a devastating performance by the monster. I don't care if Donaire was 39 years old. The two men 2.5 years ago had a fight of the year in 2019. The anticipation was that this rematch was going to be another good one. And Donaire and Inoue said, "Not today, sir." Put him down in the first and just nearly decapitated Donaire in that second round. Uh, um, if you want to talk about if it was a category for most impressive performance, Inoue's win over Donaire would take the cake. So yeah, for me, I'm changing my mind. I'm putting Inoue's stoppage win over Donaire rematch as my knockout of the year. That was as impressive as you can get in 2022. I'll go to you, Daniel and Gail, your fighter of the year for this year, for 2022 at the midway point.
Well, it's I have it pretty much even though the same thing. Only fought once a year, and even though it's only once a year, as much as tempting as it is to give it to Bam, it's not only because of the manner that he won. Not that it was technically in Vegas odds the underdog, but the fact that he did it so convincingly. I have to give it to Dimitri Bivol right now. Because with everything stacked against him as far as negotiations wise against Canelo, and most of us thinking that Canelo was going to find a way to frustrate him, he executed a near perfect game plan on how to beat Canelo and do it convincingly to the point where there was no way Vegas could try to take it from him. And that opens up a lot of avenues for him. Obviously, we know the Triple G's rematch is going to be what's at stake. But right now, like, he just beat the person that many consider the pound-for-pound king. And not only doing it fairly easily. I have to give it to Bill.
Your fighter of the year so far, Gil.
Gotta go with my colleague there. I was ringside for this fight, and because of the level of the accomplishment and the fact that it was definitely a surprise, Dimitri Bivol. We've still got 6 months to go. I anticipate we are going to see Bivol fight at least once more. Opponent is still under question, and that might either seal it for him or cause us to set it aside. It is awfully tempting to pick Bam Rodriguez as well for his accomplishments. But I think the nature of the incredible level of that win for Bivol that no one thought he could do, and the fact that he did it against the man who was at that point the consensus #1 pound-for-pound fighter on most lists, I think that gives him the nod at this halfway point of the year. But we got 6 months to go, folks. They got to keep working for it.
Katie Taylor's a serious contender because of the caliber of fighter she got the victory against. Inoue is a candidate because of the caliber of win that he scored and the way in which he did it. Bam Rodriguez is a candidate because of his rise so far, right? Bivol's a candidate because of the fighter that he beat, the guy who was considered by a lot of folks #1 pound for pound. Jermell Charlo's a candidate because he became undisputed. But my choice is Devin Haney. Context is key here. The fact that Haney had to beat Kambosos to become undisputed champion. He did so on the road, right? The circumstances in the last couple of weeks that led up to the fight with his father and his lead trainer not getting not being granted access to travel to Australia until the last 24 hours to go into Kambosos' home country in front of a packed crowd and basically shut them up, have them crickets midway through the fight, right? He didn't just win, he won by a wide margin, gave Kambosos a boxing lesson, and in the end, there was no dispute. Given all the circumstances surrounding Haney and his camp in the lead up, and for him to perform in the way that he did, for me, he's my 2022 fighter of the year. No pushback?
No, he's a worthy candidate. He's certainly worthy of consideration. Would I pick him? No, but Devin Haney deserves all the credit in the world for walking the walk where all the other guys in that division are talking the talk.
Yeah, Ryan Garcia.
Yeah.
I didn't say any names, did I?
No, but I did.
No.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And even Tank to a certain extent. You know,
yes. Oh, yeah.
Stepped up. And if there was an award for walking the walk, he gets it hands down.
Yep. And that's probably would have been it. I would have said Tank when it came to that. But we have to see if he leaves Floyd, maybe they'll do something. If he stays with Floyd, obviously, no, they'll still protect him. But Haney is a worthy candidate, but with Kambosos, the way he, like I said, with the way that he fought, unfortunately, does take a little bit out of it. Now, if Haney can pull something similar off against Loma, now we're talking.
Yeah, the aforementioned Loma, who has decided that he's going to return to the ring. The word is that he could be back in action as soon as October. Haney, who on paper is supposed to have a rematch with Devin Haney, but he stated today that's not set in stone. He could fight someone else. He is returning to the ring in October. Just not sure if it's going to be the rematch with Kambosos or will he fight someone else. So we'll keep you we'll keep everyone just updated on that situation regarding Loma and one Devin Haney. Let's move on right quick because we're running a little bit long. We're past we're a little bit past our 90-minute format. So let's get to some previews here. Fight that's taking place. We're recording this live evening of July 11th in the early morning hours of July 13th. Going to have a rematch in the junior bantamweight division as Kazuto Ioka, who has the WBO belt at 115 pounds, going to fight against a man who gave him his last defeat. That is Donnie Nietes. Nietes beat Ioka for what was the then vacant WBO title back in December 2016. Haven't heard much of him since. He's only fought twice in the interim, while Ioka Daniel has really recovered from that bout well. He won. Nietes vacated that belt. Ioka won it, and he has had some impressive victories, including a knockout win over division champion Kosei Tanaka in December 2020. Ioka comes into this fight on a serious roll. There's some questions about Nietes. Even though Nietes got the win the first time, would you make Ioka the favorite heading into this rematch technically in a few hours?
Yeah. Without a question. Without a question. Kazuto is out there fighting with with a gigantic chip on his shoulder, and the name of that chip on his shoulder is Nanewa Nue, because he still wants to be the top dog in Japan. And Nue has taken a good amount of that shine away from him, even though he beat the living daylights out of Tanaka in that front. And what's a good advantage for him this time around, unfortunately, is Nietes has gotten older. I think Kazuto is not only going to come out and try to wear down Nietes with shots to the body, just because of what Inoue did against Donaire. I think Kazuto will probably finish Nietes inside of 6 rounds.
I don't know if he'll finish him, but I'm going to go with him for the win. Nietes is 40 years old now. Like I said, he took all of 2019 and 2020 off. He fought twice in 2022. Fought twice in 2021. Excuse me. His last bout was a shaky performance, in my opinion, a draw. His last time out, and I'm just there's just an unknown factor about Nietes. While the champ has been more active and he's looked really, really good in recent outings, I'm going to go with him and win this bout by decision. This fight coming up, Gail and Jacob also is going to fight. Also is going to happen. Excuse me. This weekend, Ryan Garcia fighting Javier Fortuna. The thing for me, Gail, I mentioned how Garcia talks a lot, but hasn't done much in the ring. Hasn't fought any real top guy. He's fighting Fortuna here. For me, it's not just the fact that Garcia has to win, Gail. He has to win impressively. He's drawn a lot of criticism over the past 6 months to a year. He needs a big win here. Your thoughts, and then you can follow up, Jacob.
You're 100% on target. Ryan Garcia needs to remind everybody why they were so excited about him several years ago. But that was several years ago. He's had some time now to adjust to his new trainer, Joe Goosen. We should see more of Joe's impact in this fight. And Ryan needs to start producing. You know, you do not get to rest along on your resume very long in boxing. And we were just talking about the achievements of Devin Haney. Well, Devin has sprinted past his rivals. And if Garcia really wants to have a showdown with Devin, he's the one that needs to step up this weekend in a big way. It's not going to be enough just to put butts in the seats. And I have no doubt he'll be a big draw this weekend, even though the card is not the most exciting card. And Golden Boy usually does a nice job putting local favorites, regional favorites on the undercard. I'm not feeling a lot for this card this weekend. I'd love to be proven wrong, and I certainly will watch. It's important for Garcia to be a draw. Boxing's a business, but he's got to deliver. And there is no excuse for him not to be able to have his way with the veteran Javier Fortuna. It shouldn't be difficult. If he struggles at all with Fortuna, we've got a lot of big questions that need to be answered. So, Ryan, I'm hearing you. I'm looking at you, man. We're all going to be watching. You need to impress.
It's not just the fact that Garcia is the younger and fresher guy. He's also the much bigger guy physically. He should impose his will on Fortuna, who's a slick boxer. But to Gail's point, all eyes are on him. He must win and win impressively here.
Yeah, I've never really been high on him, and he talks a lot of shit, and I'll give him credit. I mean, the Campbell fight was good, but as far as some adversity and be able to come back, but I still think he has a lot of holes in his game that can be exploited, especially by the top people. And his last performance was not too much to be desired for. So yeah, he has to be super impressive. He can't look lackluster. If anything, he's got to knock him out pretty decisively, and I think even like pretty early. But I mean, there's part of me that says that, in order for him to get better, he needs to start to get some rounds in. Like, if these guys aren't getting their rounds in and kind of like getting used to not getting the knockout all the time, that can sometimes damage you as far as being able to see if you can really dig down deep. So I know he had a break for his mental, health and whatnot, but we'll see, with if this Goosen train is going to keep on rolling, or we're going to see another. I mean, I don't think this will be the fight, but hopefully we can see a meaningful fight with one of the other top dogs.
One more fight to talk about before we start to shut things down. There's an ESPN card on the 15th. The main event is Arnold Barboza Jr. fighting a guy by the name of Zarilla, but you're going to be in attendance for this card, Gail, but you have your eyes on one particular heavyweight.
I indeed do. On the undercard of this local sort of regional fight, Southern California, is Richard Torres Jr., the surprise silver medalist in the Olympics at heavyweight. And I believe this will be his third pro fight. I need to check that out. I'll make sure I get that properly checked out. But he trains under his father, Richard Sr. He, like I say, he was he's a small heavyweight. He was a surprise that he got as far as he did. And no shame to him to have not made it past the winner, who was an overwhelming favorite. He held his own. He didn't embarrass himself. So he's making that, sometimes difficult transition from being an amateur to a pro and doing it, in the glamour division of the sport to boot at heavyweight. He's a very interesting young man. He's intellectually and academically very talented as well. He's one of these crazy guys who can put a Rubik's Cube together in 30 seconds. He plays chess. He sings. He's kind of a Renaissance man. I'm not quite sure what he's doing fighting, to be dead honest with you, except that he likes it and he's good at it. Top Rank has always done an amazing job with its Olympic prospects. You mentioned Duke Reagan, Keyshawn Davis, who was supposed to be on this card and unfortunately is out ill, so he had to be bounced out of this card. Hopefully he'll be back. Troy Johnson. There's just a wealth of Olympic talent. In fact, I think Top Rank signed every single member of the team, Jeannie Fuchs. So Richard is in the stable being brought up, and this will be my first time to see him fighting ringside. So I'm going to keep my eyes peeled on him and see what he's all about. And it will be on ESPN on Friday night fights this week.
You're on mute, Mike, if you're trying to talk.
Can you hear us?
Oh, my bad. I was on mute. Again, I think we're gonna shut things down on that note. I want to thank Sean and MG for their comments in the live chat. If you like what you heard this evening, make sure to hit the like and the subscribe button. It'll help the overall algorithms. It'll help us get us close to being monetized. Again, for those who want to check out all things regarding Pound-for-Pound boxing report, the blog page site is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. Again, if you want to email us with questions, thoughts, suggestions, you can do so. P4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you will see links to where to check us out all on social. The link for the YouTube page, link for the Facebook page, link for the Twitter page, IG page, as well as Tumblr, where you can donate Donation be the best nation. Cash me PayPal donation links. Links to where to find the show on all podcast platforms, and also last but certainly not least, link to Beachbody on Demand. I really suggest you check out at the very least that 2-week trial for 14 days. You get free access to E&L programs, and if you're looking for a boxing specific program, Beachbody on Demand has 10 rounds, a 6-week program. As I said earlier in the show, 3 days are boxing based cardio, 2 days are weightlifting, and with this particular programs, you get the weekends off. So there you go. I'm going to go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first. Going to end the show with ladies first. As always, Gail from NY Fights and Communities Digital News. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media, for those who want to check you out occasionally on TMZ Live, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Before I make my conclusion, I will give you the straight details. Torres Jr. is only going to have his second pro fight. He's only had his pro debut. So he will be in the ring only for the second time as a pro, and we'll see him Friday night. And you can find me ringside if you're there in Temecula. Come say hi to me for NewYorkFights.com. And that's where you'll find both my work on previews and recaps and my occasional rants where I get to swear.
I'll go to you, Jacob. Jacob of Jab Hook Boxing. For those who want to check out all things, who want to talk to you about the sweet science, who want to talk to you about television and film, TV and movies, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yeah, you can hit me up on Twitter at JRATM23. And I want to do a shout out for a buddy of mine. He started a film podcast. And it's called Movie Food, and so check that out. They have a Patreon also, so if you want to, donate to that or follow them, they do free shows. But yeah, there's a friend Charlo, and probably will make an appearance on there at some point. We're just trying to find a topic, but yeah, thanks for having me on the show, and shout out to Bo. And Gus, who I think was on a couple of shows ago, was on the chat. So shout out to them. Hope they're doing good.
Shout out to Bo, who you heard on here numerous times in the past. Bo, the OG, the head of media relations, and also senior writer for Three Kings Boxing. And yeah, shout out to Gus. They did an excellent breakdown of Jesse Rodriguez, Bam Rodriguez, in his recent win over Sri Sakat Rungwasai on his podcast just a couple of weeks ago. I go to, last but certainly not least, I go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter, Rox99, RAWKZ99. Obviously, a lot happening right now in Summer League. And something that literally actually just broke. The NBA is finally going to pay the old NBA players $25 million. It's going to be equivalent to $1,000 a month. That's the money a lot of those forgotten players need, because a lot of them are old, and luckily highlighting the legacy of the ABA, because a lot of what the NBA does now would not exist without the ABA.
Absolutely. I wish it was more, but at least it's something that's owed to the old guard of the NBA. So that's great news. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me on Twitter, Brother JR, at Brother JR76 on Twitter, at Brother JR SC on IG. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Ioka Nietes 2. We'll dive a little bit into that ESPN card that's happening in Temecula. Where Gail will be in attendance. We may talk a little bit about Eric Rosa, who has a WBA belt, the regular version, at 105 pounds. We will do a recap of Garcia and Fortuna, and depending on when we will be, what day we will have the show next week, you'll like this, Daniel. We will talk one of your favorite fighters, Knockout CP Freshmart.
Yes,
who is returning to the ring to fight long-time former WBC strawweight champion Winheim Minayothin, and that's why it's going to happen on July 20th. This fight should have happened a few years ago when both
Hell yeah, nerd alert. Nerd.
Yes.
It should have been. It should have happened years ago, but it's happening now. It's still a big deal over in Thailand. So we will talk about it for sure. Maybe preview, maybe recap again. It just depends on the time that we will have the show next week. So yeah, once again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. For Gail from Communities, Digital News, and WhiteFights.com. For Jacob of Jap Boxing, for Daniel of the Inscriber, and for Boxing News. This has been episode 370 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. And let me get some sleep because I'm going to try to get up tomorrow morning and watch that Ioka Nietes fight. Y'all have a good one.